All in favor? That's carried. Next item is the minutes of the regular council meeting, August 13th, 2014. Are there any errors or omissions?
I believe under the Pops Home Hardware, it should say that Mr. Shunter and Mr. Prairie spoke on behalf of Pops Hardware. Increased tax assessment and amount of tax bill. It wasn't just the assessment that went up that was the concern, it was the amount of taxes. Same with Martin Beerline and Jake Courtley. They raised concerns, it wasn't a discussion. They raised concerns about the amount of tax. So I think it should reflect that.
So Mr. Perry raised concerns with council regarding his future commercial tax assessment?
That's what I think it more reflects. That was his issue, because then he said, I don't know if I should build or not.
Alright.
And Mr. Courtley also raised concerns about the amount that he will be paying in the future.
Raised concerns.
I think that better represents.
I didn't know the tax bill. And on Pops Home Hardware, increased tax assessment and the amount of
The tax bill.
tax bill.
It was also raising concerns on that. It's not just the assessed value that was the problem, it's the amount of taxes.
Okay, are there any other errors or omissions? I have two. I have public delegation, Mr. Burgar. Jeff Burgar, his name is spelled wrong. It's B-U-R-G-A-R. And I do not believe he came as a representative of Smitty's Restaurant. He came as just a businessman.
Oh, he mentioned
Did he?
Smitty's when it came up, I remember. He did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we will leave you as the Smitty's Restaurant manager.
I didn't even read that.
I was wondering, cause you had several he could have chose from.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I thought that's why you just said businessman.
Yeah, no, I was.
All right, we'll leave you then at Smitty's Restaurant. Makes no difference. Okay, are there any other errors or omissions? Do we have a motion to accept? Councillor Hunter has,
Make a motion to accept as amended.
all in favor? Motion is carried. Next item of business is the financial statements for 2014. Are there any questions regarding this financial statement?
What about delegations?
Did I miss something?
Delegation.
Delegation. Yes, yes, that's right.
Yeah, we kind of jumped.
You certainly did. Scheduled delegations. Are there any scheduled delegations? There are no scheduled delegations tonight. Public delegations. Are there any public delegations? Could you come forward and state your full name and the representative of your business or who you represent?
Ron Shunter, Pops Home Hardware.
Thank you for coming tonight.
I just thought, if I could, I'd provide a quick update as to where I'm at with regards to concerns expressed last go around with regards to taxes. First of all, I want to say I appreciate the discussion from last week. The time spent with Warren and Council, extremely worthwhile. And having said that, you probably owe it to the rest of the community to provide a similar opportunity. I feel that countless calls all week long, people asking questions, people wanting to know. I've passed on some information with regards to the summer report and the importance of filling out the questionnaire, so on and so forth. But people need to know. I think it's in everybody's best interest to schedule a meeting, provide a similar opportunity within the community, get Warren back up here, and continue the discussion. And I believe personally that, after talking with council, a number of you and you maintain that with regards to the assessment, there's not a lot of, you don't have a lot of influence over the process. And you're right to that extent, you probably don't. But if you choose to take the position of an educator, you get out and you engage in discussion, educate the community on the process and the value of filling out the questionnaires how to access the summary reports. I think it'll go a long ways to just enhancing engagement, community engagement within a high Prairie. So we looked at, and we used for the purpose of discussion, our tax scenario. And what I found interesting about that is because in our specific case, we don't own the building, Home Hardware owns the building. There's some information there that we hadn't seen before. We weren't aware that we could request a summary report. We get the tax notice on an annual basis like many business guys do, and but not really aware of the details that are and the numbers and the methods chosen to determine the assessment. So that's what I've been working on all week with Warren and Associates, Louise, who's been very helpful, very informative. We've worked through and we've made a lot of changes with regards to our new building assessment. Square footages, the assessment was based on a preliminary drawing that was provided probably when we submitted for the building permit, which showed a larger building than we actually built. When we staked out the building, we started to pour concrete. I cut 20 feet off the building because it was too close to the truss shell. That was never updated in the as-built drawings. It influenced the square footage that we were assessed on. Our parking lot area, it's tripled in size, so that part of it went up. Our fencing changed, our warehouse usage changed, all of that was revised this week. And it'll have an influence on the overall assessment. Where I'm at now is, and what I'm struggling with, what I need help with, is Warren and Associates have assessed the property based on comparable lease rates for a building of our size. Well, what I'm struggling to understand why in the community of High Prairie I'm being assessed at the same lease rate that these buildings of similar size are in Edmonton. We've been assessed at $12 a square foot. I've spent all week phoning agents and different people in Edmonton, and that's what they're paying. And one of the busiest, the best real estate markets, from what I understand in Alberta, people in Edmonton are paying $12 a square foot. But at that price, they've got snow removal, they've got garbage pickup, they've got all these services available to them that we don't have in High Prairie, yet we're paying the same lease rate. That's where I'm at with Warren and Associates at the present time. We're looking at those lease rates and their cold storage building at $6 a square foot. I've been told by many that, again, lots of phone calls this week that people in cold storage buildings in Edmonton don't even pay that much. But again, they have all the services available to them, even at those rates. So lots of work for me left to do with Warren's and Power and Associates as far as probably negotiating, coming to a conclusion and consensus on what we're going to pay, or what's fair to pay in the form of a lease rate. All of that in the end is going to influence our tax assessment. And my opinion is, for what it's worth, that's how this council could add value. We talked last week, Dennis Berry made the comment when we were talking about the questionnaire. I've had many people this week tell me that they just scrumple them up and they throw them out because they don't understand the purpose of filling it out. And the fact that they're not filling out is having an impact on my taxes because we don't have enough information being returned to Warren and Associates for them to make a fair determination. So they start to look at all these other factors, some of them, lease rates outside of our community. And that, in my opinion, isn't fair. But I was surprised by how many people, including myself, don't understand the process, don't understand the value of returning the information. And I made it awful clear to Home Hardware this week that those are things that I need to see. I need to know that. I need to be part of the questionnaire and filling that out. So the purpose this week for me was to refine and massage that assessment report, that summary report completed by Warren and Associates, and make sure it's entirely accurate. The square footage is correct, parking area is correct, so that there's no more, there's no more discussion. I can't debate it any longer. It is what it is. And then we'll look at the other aspects. When it comes to taxes, in addition, we've talked about mill rates and opportunities like that. We're gonna talk about that, we need to talk about that. And town spending as well. Be prepared, we need to talk about that. But that's how I've spent my time this week. I really appreciate the opportunity last week. I would urge you strongly to create a similar opportunity for the rest of the community. And we've talked about ways to engage and gain engagement within the community. Well, there's an opportunity for the council to get out and communicate the process. It has the opportunity, I guess, or the tax revenue or the dollars that you draw in, without changing mill rates, without doing much of anything other than educating the community. I gotta believe you can influence that revenue if people are doing it correctly. And might go up, might go down. But the fact that we're not doing it, or only 15% of us within the community are putting forth the information, it's having an impact on everybody's assessment, in my opinion, from what I've learned. But again, where I need some help, I'll wrap things up, is those lease rates. It is my opinion that $12 per square foot in the community of High Prairie, in a community where there isn't this services return, isn't fair. And
I agree. And I have
I'm
a
just
comment
gonna.
on that. Councillor Hampton?
I was just gonna mention motion 52514 from last 2 weeks ago. Council advertised an open forum for Warren Powers to attend and meet with the public. So it's not scheduled yet. It is approved or requested. It's just up to our CAO to coordinate.
Right.
And from my understanding, I was unavailable, so I couldn't attend. From my understanding, I heard that Warren wanted to come for free. That there would be no charge, and he would come back. And this way he can meet with the business and actually as a resident, I'd love to discuss more. We've talked a few times over the phone, but I'd like to meet him in person and go through it.
Yeah, it was my first time meeting him as well. I didn't care, struggling with him. Eloise, very helpful.
Perfect.
Yeah, very willing to field all my calls, reply to all my emails. And so it was time well spent. But still some work to do. The newspaper this week, for the first time in a year, I clapped my hands, so to speak. It was very positive. Often there's too much negativity within the newspaper. It clouds and it just creates controversy. This was good to see. So whoever was driving that, very pleasing. Having said that, again, I'll wrap things up, but I need some help. Lease rates within High Prairie. How do we tackle that? Who do we talk to? How do we collect some information that may help influence Power and Associates to make some changes?
One of the problems that because I've seen that form and I was one of the ones that crumbled it up. It's too hard to fill out, and they're asking for information that business people don't want to provide.
That was the common feedback this week. I'm not going to share my numbers. It's none of their business. But they're not asking for the numbers. They're asking for cost of ownership.
So unless they change the format,
yeah, and
I think that's what they're going to have to do, instead of saying, well, it's a format off the internet or it's standard format. Actually, take a look at it and say, we don't need your income.
Yeah.
Because that's what business people don't want to share, is their income.
That's right. On that note, $12 a square foot in Edmonton, in addition to the services provided, the maintenance is provided. In my building, I pay for parking lot repairs. I pay for everything.
And I had another comment on that, because after we were looking at the screen print and they were saying, okay, I think it was $10 or whatever, and you had said my lease goes up with income. That's how Home Hardware.
It does. The difference though, and you can't, and I've had this discussion with Powers and Associates, what I pay for rent to Home Hardware is an internal calculation. It's an internal function. It can't be used to determine.
And does he use it?
He's partially does, yes.
He should, because that is a royalty.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, how you have to tell him.
Yeah.
This is Home Hardware's royalty.
Yeah.
And they just put it in as the rent, but it's not. It's a royalty.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
So.
Yeah.
again,
No, the
a lot of
lease
that-
rate's gotta be based on what's fair within the community,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Never
So
mind.
you
the-
really can't use your rate at all.
No, I agree, yeah,
You have to
It's-
actually go out and get owner-occupied buildings.
yeah,
Because I believe Mac's convenience store is probably another royalty rate.
yeah,
And all of those franchises, there's not very many that aren't paying a royalty to their head office, and they're calling it a lease rate.
yes.
So.
Again, back to the terminology.
That's right. So keep that in mind the next time you're talking to them. You might get further ahead on that one.
Very good.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much for coming and updating us, and we appreciate the fact that you are taking an interest. Are there any other scheduled or public delegations? Any other public delegations?
I have something to say here.
Mr. Burger, could you state your name and your business?
Just Ross,
Burger?
High Prairie, yeah. I just, well, I was at the meeting here where you guys took all these monies and your honorariums and that off of the internet there because they were all chicken scratch and everything, and you guys said that you could come in and get them. I was the one who pointed myself out as somebody. Does anybody go and look at them? And now I have to pay for these to get them? And then when I do get them, I have to pay for honorarium stuff that I don't even ask for. I didn't get anything from Mr. Long, Councillor Long. I only got one from Mr. Penasket, Brian Penasket, is that right?
Panassi.
Penasket, sorry.
Panassi.
For May and June, and all I wanted was June and July. You guys took them off, but I don't see any chicken scratch and everything, so I'm very, very happy that you guys learned to write all in 1 week. So it just seems to be a setup of, let's get this off, we don't want anybody to know this, and anybody who comes in will charge them. So like, I don't know what happened there. There was no mention of fees or anything, and I can read these quite well. Why can't you have them on the internet? We're paying for that now.
Okay. Any other comments, Councillor Hampton?
I would ask, were the fees for viewing or were the fees for photocopies?
I can get copies off of the internet. I could have, okay?
I understand what I'm saying.
Okay, so if
is
I
there-
wanted them, I had to pay $5. So is
Mr.
this another technicality? You could come and view them for free, but if you want copies that we used to provide, you can't.
It was clarification. That's all.
So are-
I don't know what you paid money for. I didn't
For
know
the
there was a fee,
copies
so
of
I'm
these here
asking.
that I could just walk in and
So,
pick
get
them up, I'm
photocopies.
sorry, but
Could you view them?
I have no idea. All I had is they gave me an envelope there and said that's $5.15. And there's stuff in here that I didn't even ask for.
Okay, all right. We'll take that under advisement. I thank you for coming. Appreciate the time that you took to bring that to our attention. Any other? Hello, those microphones. Are there any other public delegations? Public delegations? No more public delegations. I thank those that came. I appreciate, and I think the rest of council also appreciates the fact that you did take the time to come out and voice your opinions. The next item then is finance. So, do we have a motion? Councilor Danaka?
I make a motion that council receive the June 2014 financial statement presented for information.
All right, are there any questions regarding this statement? Councilor Danaka?
Just going through that, I'm looking at the 2014 year-to-date budget and the 2014 actuals, and the ones that stick out for me were license and permits. The actuals are 238,000, and the budget was for 23,000.
It's the hospital building permit, a hospital building
Okay.
permit.
Okay.
It wasn't budgeted for, but we
Okay.
received funds.
And the other one?
I have other 14,000, actual 60,000.
vehicle call-out service that the fire department provides.
Okay.
That's where most of that variance comes from.
That's gonna drop huge.
Why was it so much different this year than other years? Or, do you know?
Very hard to budget for. We had more accidents this year than we did in previous years. Conservative amount was budgeted for, but actually there were more call-outs.
It actually arose because previous council wanted more billing back to the provincial government. They hadn't been billing for at least a year. Is that correct, Mr. Tamako?
I may say so.
Pardon?
I may say so.
So then they started really billing, and they raised the rates, and they really took advantage of the fact that that money was sitting waiting for us.
Perfect, that's good.
Are there any other questions regarding?
Operating surplus deficit. 2014 year-to-date budget, we had, if I'm reading this correctly, we had a deficit of 848,000 plus now in the year-to-date actuals, we have a surplus of 482,000? Am I
That's
reading
correct.
that correctly?
You are.
Okay. And that happened in how?
Well, as noted on the request for decision, natural gas prices were higher, which resulted in revenues being higher than budget. We had land sale that was, I think we budgeted 150,000 and it actually came in 400,000. There was the hospital building permits, which would result in additional revenues. So that's why our surplus is better than budgeted. Our operating expenses are pretty close to what we budgeted for, but it was on the revenue side that we really did well.
So that answers the same question regarding capital revenues. We were at 1.3, now we're at 102.
Right, then the capital revenue side of things, we were late in starting our projects, and the capital revenues are only those projects funded by grant money. So we've got two of them. We've got the lift station and we've got, I believe, 49th Street with the
Okay.
road construction, and they've just both
Okay.
really been started.
Councillor Hampton?
Did you wanna come this way first?
Yeah.
Answered my questions.
Okay.
So, fine.
Alright, on the previous page, the statement of financial position, our deferred revenue of 3.5 million, is that the sewer lift and the upgrade on the road?
That's right, the MSI Capital deferred grant revenue. It's also the Ministry of Transportation, which there's two grants. There's basic municipal transportation grant and the federal gas tax grant. And also deferred revenue there is our current tax revenues for the months of August right till December. So they're deferred and we take them in equally over the 12-month period into income.
Okay. Does the financial position reflect purchase of the town building, the school division, and or the fuel tanks for the airport?
No, not in July. The town building, we haven't purchased it, so it's not
Still
reflected in our
purchased.
tangible assets. And the purchase of the fuel tanks, I believe, occurred in, was it July or August? I can't remember.
Not sure. So there's another, yeah. So
And it
it's,
was
it's
purchased
just
through-
not in here yet, that's all.
I can't remember the month, but it was purchased, funded by the surplus, so it'll show up in tangible capital assets. And it was listed, I believe, on the capital project budget, capital budget,
Okay.
for the fuel tanks.
My question for number 6 were related, which were answered, was the increases in gas was our long cold winter, which is expected again this year, yay, and increased cost associated with the gas. But my question number 5 is government operating grants. Have we applied or been successful for any new grants? Not continuing funds from previous, but this year, is there any success?
There have no grants been applied for other than the MSI operating, from the operating side of things, and then there are the capital grants, which are MSI capital, basic municipal transportation grant, federal gas tax.
Okay. Have we had a chance to draw up the grant for the sewer lift and to forward that off yet?
Well, I'm in the process of building an application. There's quite a bit of work that needs to go
Yeah.
into this. And at which point we'll be approaching council, because it also requires a resolution from council
Okay.
supporting the application. And then as I think most counselors know, it's anticipated will come back denied.
Yeah, we're expecting that, but then we wanna use that denial because we were told, unless we, where's your application? Well, you already told us we're not gonna get it anyway, so we didn't apply. Well, apply and then we'll see what we can do for you. Whatever. But you gotta jump through the hoops you do. If I can get money for it, how else can I get it? So, we'll chase it.
Councilor
That
Sassen?
answered most of my questions. The other one I was curious about, it seems, the amount on interest and investment income is quite a bit less than was budgeted for. I'm just wondering about that. And, like, it's not a lot, it's $6,000 less, but I'm wondering why we're not more accurate on that.
Well, there was a catch-up made this is June statement. In July, I made a catch-up, where I recorded the interest. I only recorded quarterly, the interest on that, and so it happened in July where I made a catch-up from May. Actually, the interest was recorded up to the end of April, and then I calculated the interest from May until the end of July, and made that entry in July statement. So if you check the July, which Mr. Smock will be sending out to all the council, you'll see that it's actually above budget in July.
And just another, I guess, a question is because of Donna's email about what Peace River is receiving from the federal government for their new, for renovations on the airport of 11 million. Is there any?
Yeah, 11 million over 2 years for upgrades and rehabilitation.
Yeah, is there something that we could be doing on that particular, is there a grant available for that, or how did that come around that they got that money? And we're looking at these improvements to our airport. I'm just wondering, that might be an opportunity to investigate where they got 11 million and see if we can tap some of that. I don't know where it came from, but.
Yeah, I can find out.
I can't remember in my email, I think it's at the Transport Canada.
Yeah, it was a federal.
Something grant.
See, that's federal.
Yep.
Transport Canada.
Let's chase it.
But worth looking into.
You got that email, didn't you? Are there any other questions? I had one. It was regarding the surplus of $586,706. And when I look at that surplus, if you subtract the $400,000 from Mr. Portley's land sale, and you subtract the $200,000 from the hospital permit, there wouldn't be a surplus, would there?
There would, you're correct. Those additional revenues created a surplus.
So, really, if you take out those two items, are we not in a very bad situation?
Well, I wouldn't say we're in a very bad situation because there are capital revenues that haven't been earned yet. We would be in a less fortunate situation, yes, that you can say. Well, once we get those capital revenues, we'd still be doing better than budget. If we had, like, for instance, budget capital revenues are 1.3 million. Once we earn that, even if you subtracted the quarterly land sales and the hospital permit, we'd still be doing fairly well. So basically, we only record $104,000 for capital revenues. We've got a budget of 1.3 million. Once the lift station gets completed and the road gets completed, so even if you took out those revenues, we're still doing fairly well.
So if you move up to where it says total operating expenses of 4.8 million, we are $100,000 over what is expected, aren't we?
Operating surplus, there actually is a surplus of 482,000.
No, total operating expenses.
Okay, operating expenses, they're pretty much within budget, including the hospital building permit.
No,
So-
just the expenses. The total operating expenses are 4.8 million. And the budgeted, for year-to-date budget is 4.7 million. So that means you're 100,000 over already.
Right, due to the building permits, the expense for the
Just
building
the
permits?
expenses, that's got nothing to do with the permits.
Well, it does, because the permits weren't budgeted for as an expense, but we actually incurred the expense. Superior Safety
Oh, I
charges
see.
us.
The
and-
expenses associated with the permit,
That's right,
okay.
which we're not budgeted for, but actually incurred. So, we got in $200,000 for
All
the
right,
revenue, we spent 100,000 plus on the expense side, the Superior Safety codes.
Herb, where does that show up, those expenses for the, permits? What
Per-
line?
The expenses for the permits will show up under planning and development. And the revenue for the permits show up under license and permits on the revenue
Yeah.
section.
so are those straight across costs, or do we make any money on that?
We do, make some money on the building permits, yes.
How much? 10%?
Yeah, I think it's around 10–15%.
Okay.
I'd have to actually take a look at the figures to be sure, but I know we do make some money on it.
All right, so again, I'm concerned that the money for Courtney's land sale is being rolled into, it's rolled into operating to make it look like we do have more money. But, okay, is there any other questions, comments? Mr. Tomato?
Yeah, but just to make sure that the picture is very, very clear, the way this system works is that anytime we're making capital upgrades and expenses come in, they become earned capital revenue. So you need to look at the projected capital revenue and see them as money coming in. So if we have started building the lift station a little earlier or down the roads a little earlier, we could even have 1.3 million and the bottom line will still be very, very positive. I just want to make sure that you understand the way the earned capital revenue works. As we build, then we earn the revenue. The revenue then becomes added to the capital revenue and then increases the possibility of having a more positive outcome.
I really like that scenario. We
Yeah.
build, we get new
It's
things,
called-
and we make money.
Exactly.
It
It's
sounds
called-
really
it's called
good.
earned
Can we do
capital-
more of
yeah,
that?
it's called, and that's the problem we had with the previous situation where people were not building, were not going for the monies, and therefore the capital revenues were not coming in, and we're struggling to balance the budget. But we've been very aggressive with the MSI, with the federal gas tax, and we've left no stone unturned. Yeah.
All right, we have a motion, could you read it back, please?
Just to receive for information.
Moved by Councillor Tanaka that council receive the June 2014 financial statement presented for information.
All in favor? Motion is carried. Next item is the property tax development incentive grant. Councilor Amter?
I make a motion that council approves the tax grant applied for on the property tax development incentive policy roll 350600, grant amount $602.64.
Any comments on this? Councilor Denaka?
I have, Daryl is one of the people that continue to build in this town, amongst many others. Again, I'm just going back to a couple of council meetings ago, we were chastised by Mr. Waco Sirkawi Holmberg. You have policies, follow your policies. One of the things that John Sarud cited many, many times in his report was you guys have policies, but you're not following the policies. With this one, it was past the due date for the application, was made June 19th, formal application was May 25th, it missed the deadline. I'm just bringing that forward.
Any other comments on that? The deadline, and I also looked at that, and I'm thinking, why haven't we got a deadline on a grant or an incentive? Why, what is the deadline? Is it 30 days after they receive a tax notice? Or is it 6 months after they receive a tax notice? Why is it so, what's the constraint on this that all of a sudden they can't do it 6 months later? Councillor Empton?
I believe that the application has to be done before the tax payment is received. So once, they could apply at any time, but it's for the following year's tax. So when the tax is gonna be due in July, he's gotta apply 2 weeks prior. And that's basically what I'm looking at here. So the deadline is June 15th because we're expected to pay our tax by July 1st. So he's gotta apply before, or the assessments come out at that time and they're due July 31st actually. So he's gotta apply beforehand. He can still apply the next year for the following years, cause we only tax once a year, right? 6 months in, July 1st. So at any time prior.
So, well, I'm probably not understanding this correctly, but are you saying then that he gets the tax bill and he pays the tax bill, pays the full amount, and then he can apply for a rebate of the portion that is the improvement, which is the house?
I'm not sure of the process. Or Herb or
Can
Kelly.
you want to throw some light on this for us, please?
I don't think there is any good reason for the 2-week window that's open. There's no reason that it couldn't be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever amount council chooses. Should be a reasonable period of time. I think maybe at the time it was set up for 2 weeks, anticipating that the person would get the grant before the taxes were paid. I can't quite remember what the reasoning was. But if council wishes to change it, I think they should.
I don't think the 2-week window is sufficient, and this is what happens. So, I agree with what you're saying, that we are supposed to follow our policies, but being as this was the first time that we actually implemented, I could see where this was not a good, it didn't come out the way we wanted it to, mostly because of the date. The incentive worked, he built the house, we were satisfied with the rebate, but the date is not a good time. So, taking into account what you said, I agree. But I also think that we have to amend that date, and I think 6 months, probably bring it back and give them a longer window.
I'm in complete agreement. You gotta remember, that's building season. And what does he do? He builds.
Exactly.
You think he's gonna stop and, I mean, it is $600.
Exactly.
If I build my house, or if it's, you wait for a rainy day. Didn't happen. We had lots of sunshine this summer.
All right, so we probably want 2 motions. One that is the motion that Councillor Enter has made. The other motion is to bring this back with a rewritten date, timeframe? Okay. Could you read then the motion back, please? If there's no other, is there any other discussion?
It says right there.
So it's the recommended action, that's your motion? All in favor? It's carried. Councillor Donaka, did you want to make?
I'm not sure what I'm trying to word.
Change the tax and development incentive policy, date. To bring it, to request administration to bring back policy, property tax development incentive policy, with a new proposed deadline further extended.
I'll go with what you say.
Yes.
My suggestion would be to make the deadline a certain number of days from the date of issuance of the tax notice. Make it 30, 60, 90 days, whatever you choose, from the issuance of the tax notice.
90 days. Gives him a big window. Gives him a big window, 90 days.
3 months?
Well, yeah, cause then he's, end of September, yeah.
All right. So bring it back, there you are, with a 90-day window. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Next item is the request for tax penalty reversal. Councillor Emter.
Make a motion that council receive the CIBC letter dated July 23rd, 2014 regarding council consideration to waive tax penalties on 8 properties for information.
Is there a comment on this one? Questions on this one? Councillor Donaka.
In reading the letter, both parties were we're at fault. I called your office and I was informed the 2014 property taxes would be due the end of July as per my records. Upon receipt, I glanced at the top, and as I was informed by your office, taxes were going to be due the same as last year. Unfortunately, a miscommunication from our office to them, she didn't read it right. I think we should still, waive the penalties.
Councillor Long?
Unfortunately, there's residents that are going to be impacted by this, but I would ask CIBC if we were late because we misread the date on a letter, if they would waive the penalty for us. And I can tell you unequivocally, it would be no. They would say pay up, regardless, any bank. But now we have to look at what kind of an impact are we having on the ratepayers.
Would this
Councillor Panasic?
would this go back on the ratepayers, or would this would be eaten up by the CIBC and their, maybe cut into their $14 billion profit?
Approximately $2 billion per
Councillor.
year. That was my comment, that actually it is a clerical error from CIBC. It has nothing to do with the property owners. They make their payment every month. CIBC made a clerical error. It happened. It's a $2,700 bill, and they're gonna come out tomorrow actually with their new quarterly update. And it's expected this year about $2 billion profit. They had $570 some million first quarter in Canadian Bank. They're okay.
You can't make your decision based on how much they're making.
Well, I
You know
sorry.
that. You have to make the decision based on whether or not you are willing to waive this because she made a clerical error. And that was a good point. So,
Madam Mayor, if I just might add a bit of clarification. Nobody in the office has confirmed her allegation or her assertion that somebody at the office told her they'd be due at the end of July. However, just looking at when she called, April 29th, the tax bylaw, I'm not sure, I don't think it had been passed in April, I think it was in May that it got passed. So if she did call, let's assume she did call, and one of our people in the office did say, well, you know, they probably said something like last year they were due at the end of July. I doubt very much they would have said that they wouldn't have known the due date because the bylaw wasn't passed. So rather than think of it being a miscommunication, maybe perhaps look at it that it might have been not miscommunication, but it might have been maybe our best estimate based on what happened last year. Ultimately, the taxpayer is responsible for looking at that box that says due date on their tax notice. And if you did pass this, just think of the number of people that you could get, you know, theoretically coming forward saying, hey, I didn't notice the due date on the tax notice. Then you'd be in a real bind. So it's a tough one, I know, but on the other hand, we have to look at what the
Mr.
consequences.
Zedel, I don't think it's tough at all. The fact of the matter is, you get a bill, it's got a due date. It doesn't really matter what people tell you, it's got the due date on it. So I think that is the decision you have to make. Are we upholding our due dates or aren't we? So we have a motion to receive for information. Is there any other comment on it? All in favor? It's carried. Next item is the Peace Library Systems. Councillor Hampton.
Make a motion to council forward the PLS request to increase municipal fees by 5% per year between 2016 and 2018 to the 2015 budget deliberations.
Is there a discussion on this item?
I just have a question. What would be the net increase for us, and any idea? Like, is it, like, I'm figuring it's about $840 or somewhere in there if we add the 28 cents per capita increase?
did a rough calculation, taking it as a population of, I think, 2,600 or something, cause I think it went from 14 to 16 plus, from 2015 to 2018 or something in there.
And I guess the other question, I'm just wondering, being on the library board, you might know, is why don't the libraries get together with the public schools and the colleges and make one library system for a small town like this as opposed to having many? Is there any good thoughts to that?
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer. I know that the Peace Country Library System is trying to work with the reserves to try and get them access so they will come and use the library and that type of system, but it's unfortunately it's not being very receptive at the moment. In answer to your question, I don't know, Ryan. I honestly don't know.
And the other thing that just got me with this one is, what if we approve this and there's all of these other municipalities and the other municipalities don't agree to the increase, and then we end up paying and they don't pay, so we're helping to fund all of the other communities, in essence.
Let's discuss this at the
Councillor.
budgets.
Yeah, but we can do that.
Councillor Danaka, one last comment.
Just in the body of their letter, it says they're asking us to send a letter of support by September the 30th of this year, if we're supporting the upgrade to the master agreement. So
we wouldn't need to move it to the
So you need another motion.
yes.
Okay, so we have one motion that puts this forward to the 2015 budget deliberations. All in favor? I didn't see yours, yes, carried. And do we have another motion then for the support? Councillor Danaka?
I make a motion that council sends a letter of, in support of the master agreement to the Peace Country Library System for the suggested increases per capita prior to September 30th, 2014.
Councillor Danaka?
If we send a letter of support, are we not saying that we're going to pay the increased fee? Is that, I would take it if we were sending a letter of support, we're agreeing to the increase.
Yes, we're indicating we're in support of it when we haven't even debated it, and I'm actually against it.
Actually, as I'm reading this now, it says, upon receipt from the minimum 26 members, the amended agreement and new fees will be officially approved on behalf of the membership. So if we send it a letter saying we approve it, we're part of that, so skip that, we'll just take it to the budget.
She withdraws her motion, I assume. Do you withdraw your motion?
I withdraw that motion, thank you.
Okay. Just as a matter, and I could be wrong on my decimals, but it's a 25-cent raise per capita. There's about 2,500 people in High Prairie, so 25 cents is $625.
But the users can pay that.
Okay, the next item then is the Alberta Lake Management Society. Councillor Enter.
Make a motion that council receive the Alberta Lake Management Society request for sponsorship for the 21st annual workshop being held at the Slave Lake County Conference Center for information.
Comments? And now you're the representative on.
I am on the Watershed Council, and they are, I guess, helping to coordinate and organize this particular conference, and they are looking for any sponsors along with anything else, so that's why they are sending it. We've supported the Watershed Council, and they're looking for their conference to be, and this year it is in Slave Lake as opposed to in Calgary or Lethbridge or one of those other communities, so it is close to home this particular year.
Any other comments? And they're asking for $500. Do we have $500 in our promotional budget? We do? We do have $500 in our sponsorship budget. Watershed is is part of our, municipal concern. Yes, Mr. Tanaka?
There's something very interesting here. Donate a travel bursary for a student, young professional, $250.
What page?
There's the next,
It's on page 35.
page 35.
Donate a travel bursary for a student young professional. So you could identify your sponsorship dollar. Is the motion for information?
The motion
Yes,
for
it is.
information.
The motion is for information. All right then.
You
Is
don't
there
like to
any
save money,
other,
stop spending it.
is there any other comments or anything like that? All in favor of the motion? And opposed? So the motion is defeated. Does anyone make another motion?
I would
Councilor
make a
Vanessa?
motion that we, sponsor the, ALMS Society for the amount of $500.
Did you want to specify 250 goes to a student? Or let them?
I don't know. I'm not sure about what that is for or anything else, so.
500 is for coffee sponsor?
Yeah.
I don't know whether you want to be attached to that.
Yeah. Well, if it's Tim Hortons coffee, that's okay, no, but I don't know which one it is, but, I mean, I don't wanna support the gold, silver, bronze, but that's, so, yeah, maybe the 250, I'd be all right with that too.
Councillor Lalonde?
I was gonna say, if you were looking at 500, we could split it up to make two $250 bursaries and allow two people to go.
2 students
Yeah.
designated then.
Okay, I make my motion for $500, which is two $250 bursaries for the student and young professionals.
So you'll beat the bushes and try to get somebody from High Prairie.
Yeah.
2 from High
Yeah.
Prairie.
2 from Hyper, I don't even, like I say, I'm not sure what that is for.
I would imagine it's a university student in the program of studies.
Good, tell them it's from Northern Alberta students. Councillor Emter?
I was wondering if our, treasurer or Mr. Tamaklu could let us know how much money, we spend on the watershed, through sponsorship, development, community attendance, programs, et cetera, to date for the end of the year, just rough ballpark.
I can probably do that, cause we sponsored them for $5,000, and the other thing would be, my costs to attend the meetings. So, they meet once a month, and it would be, I don't know, yeah. So over a year, and they didn't meet over the summer, so I think there's 10 meetings a year. Gives you $1,000, gives you an idea.
Any other questions? Comments? Nothing? Councillor Emter?
And as I was indicating with one of my comments, which I shouldn't have said until I raised my hand, the only way we're gonna save money is by not spending it. I know it's only $500, but every little program we do at $500 keeps adding up. We've had public delegations 2 meetings in a row talking about taxes, talking about cost. The only gonna lower that is by controlling what we're doing. So unfortunately, I'm not gonna be in favor of this.
All right then, Councillor Panassa?
No, I was gonna comment to that, but that's okay.
Okay, so, we're sending, we're sponsoring 2 students to go to this hopefully from Northern Alberta. All in favor? Opposed? And the motion is carried. Volunteer-driven, not-for-profit capital projects policy. This is sent back and has now been come back again with a rewriting. Can I have a motion on this, please? Councillor Panassa?
Council approved the capital project policy number 68-2014.
And comments? Councillor Tanaka?
Personally, to me, the policy, the first paragraph and the second paragraph, I find the first paragraph very repetitive. My suggestion is to delete that whole paragraph and just go with the second one.
Comments? Councillor Actor? Councillor Panasic?
No.
Councillor Long?
No, I see what you're saying. Councilor Tanaka is saying. Okay.
Okay, so the motion is,
The motion was to accept it as is.
this is. Oh, capital project policy 68. Okay, I actually agree, and I think the rest of you must have agreed too, because nobody said anything. So, all in favor of accepting as is? And we have one, opposed? And it is carried as is.
No, you've just defeated it.
Yeah, we defeated it, as, yeah, okay, the motion is defeated.
Mhm.
I was gonna say as is, we didn't do that. All right, next one. Do you want to make a motion then?
I make a motion that, administration, come back with the rewrite of, policy number 68-2014 with the, removal of the first paragraph and only the second paragraph in the policy.
Can we make a motion that we accept it with an amendment?
Can you do that?
Yes.
Wouldn't that, that we'll
Okay.
accept
So
with
that it doesn't
amendment?
have to come back again and
Okay.
waste everybody's time one
Okay.
more time.
I've changed my motion for the amendment.
Okay. Do you have, can you read it, please?
Moved by Councillor Panasic that council approve the volunteer-driven, not-for-profit capital project policy number 68-2014 as amended to remove the first paragraph.
All in favor? That's carried. Next item is the Prairie District Museum and Historical Society. Motion, please. Councillor Amter.
I'd like to make a two-part motion. The council approve a donation in the amount of $500 made payable to the Prairie District Museum and Historical Society be taken from council's advertising and promotions, account number 21-1221 for the Alberta Cultural Days being held on September 26th to 28th, 2014, and rescind the previous motion of $500 donation to the Slave Lake Water Attendants. I'd rather spend the money on town.
I don't think you can rescind a motion in the same as an approval motion, can you, Mr. Tomaco?
I made a two-part motion.
So
we're
you're gonna
You
vote
can
on the
vote
first
on the
part?
first one and then you can vote on the second.
So it's like two
Just
motions.
There are.
Two motions.
Two motions.
Yeah.
All right, first one is to give the, Prairie District Museum Historical Society $500.
You bet.
Any comments on that? For Alberta Culture Days? Councillor Denaka.
I just wanna say that, there is value in this. I had Darlene put together some numbers for me. In 2011, they had 181 people plus 60 artists take part in the show or in the Culture Days. Last year, they had 302 plus 81 art show entries. So it is progressively getting bigger and bigger, and I think it's a worthy cause to support.
I'm gonna go around, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Long?
I think it's worthy of $500. I think that, if the discussion goes around with the, joint use agreement, and if we end up getting the ice surfaces and facilities put into the town, we'll be able to save a lot of money by shutting down the ice surfaces, and I sure hope that that, Councilor Hunter would see the value in that. But for $500, I think it's a dollar well spent, especially the watershed. It's vitally important to this area.
What, we're talking
I know.
about the museum?
I'm just going back to that.
Oh, okay.
So yes, I'm in favor of it.
Okay, Councilor Panassa.
I think it's a good cause, and it's one of those things that brings some activity, action into the town, and we talk about keeping a vibrant town. This is one of those things that makes it vibrant when you have these kinds of activities. I'm in favor of it.
Councilor Hunter.
I'm extremely in favor of bringing activity and growth to the town. It's $500. I much prefer to spend my $500 in town and the activities that occur here versus giving it to another town that has got the growth and development going on already.
My comment would be this is a 3-year activity. I can't, for the life of me, figure out why we didn't get this as a grant application when
Yeah.
they were advertised for it. They knew it was coming, and yet we didn't get the application. I'm disappointed. Perhaps this is an educational component to let people know ahead of time. So perhaps you can take that back. I'm in favor of this, but I'm disappointed that we didn't get this as part of the grants that we're supposed to be looking at in the 2015 budget. And I do know that they have received, they applied for $5,000 from Alberta Culture. They only got 3,500 of it. But normally they don't even get 3,500. Do they?
I think the last year they got it, I think they got the full amount of what I remember Darlene saying, the last, 2011 when they did it. And they applied again for the same amount, but they only got
35. It's in the budget. Okay. Anyways, that's my comments, and so, all in favor then, do you want the motion read back?
No, it's the first part of the first one.
Okay, all in favor? The next part of the motion?
Next part of the motion was rescinding the motion, I don't know the motion number,
Okay.
we don't have it yet. It's the ALMS and LSWC, $500 donation.
Can you do that?
Okay.
You can do that in the same meeting, a motion is passed, and then
Rescind the motion.
rescind the motion immediately.
It's just to cancel the decision of council.
It's just, I wanna move the money, rather than spend it.
I know.
It's just awkward, but it's done.
You
It's
can
just a
spend your
vote.
whole council meeting going back and forth,
Exactly.
making motions and rescinding them.
Yeah.
So are you sure that
I'm very sure.
there isn't a timeline that you cannot
I'm
do
very
it
sure we
until
can
next?
rescind, council can rescind the decision anytime.
All I'm giving is 3 people an opportunity to move that money elsewhere.
Or find some people.
All right,
I pray that we
so
can go.
read the motion back, please.
Moved by Councilor Hunter that council rescind motion number 557-14. Moved by Councilor Panasic that council donate to the Alberta Lake Management Society in the amount of $500 to be split into 2 $250 travel bursaries for a student and young professionals to be taken from the 2014 operating budget line item.
Did you get that, Councilor Tanaka?
Yes.
Do you want to paraphrase it?
No, so
Okay.
basically,
I don't wanna put the 500 over in Slave Lake, I wanna put the 500.
okay, okay.
We've
I
already
just wanted,
approved the
okay,
high
perfect, yeah,
I
yeah.
wanna
Okay.
take the 500 back.
Okay.
All set. All in favor of Councilor Hunter's motion?
Nobody changing that.
And opposed? So the motion is defeated. Next item of business is the electronic signboard. Motion?
I make a,
Yes, Councilor
I
Tanaka?
make a motion that council approve policy 47, B-2014 electronic signboard.
Comments? Councilor Tanaka?
My concern is 4.3A, all requests will be approved or rejected by the chief administration officer or designate for the town prior to any messages being placed. My concern is that the CAO has his criteria, his designate may have another criteria, there's no defined criteria what needs to be rejected.
Mr. Tomaco, you wanna speak to that?
Yeah, the policy speaks for itself. It's a policy. So I should interpret the policy the same way as the designate should interpret the policy.
I still have some concerns with that, in that everybody has their own idea, I guess, what would qualify. Unless you have something that says, if you make that decision and you go away and you appoint somebody else, and you tell them, well, these are the criteria that these people are rejected, then why can't that be in the policy?
There's a simple approach to this is, in the past, that decision was made either by the chief administrative officer or the treasurer. And we find it very awkward. Most of the work is done by the legislative secretary, who is the designate. So why have the treasurer make that decision? That's why we're taking out the treasurer and replacing that with the legislative secretary.
I understand what you're saying. In your concerns, but I think there's only a couple of scenarios where it wouldn't be approved. And one of them which was added, which was the concerns that came from, some of the people in the town, was not advertising the names of businesses, for-profit businesses, because they're gaining marketing that they haven't paid for. That was their concern. So we've taken that out. And otherwise, if it's submitted on the form and it meets those other requirements, it's going to be approved. It's a public service, so.
So, Councillor Donata?
Yeah, I understand, my apologies, I speed reading it.
All right, so what they're saying is that all applications from any nonprofit or charitable organization will be accepted. Is that what you're saying?
From non-profit organizations will be accepted, yes. And charitable organizations.
So it doesn't really matter what they're advertising, it's gonna be accepted.
But obviously within a sense of decorum, that if somebody wants to.
Doesn't say that.
Well, that's.
Now, that's what Councillor Donaka is discussing. She said, what criteria are you using? And is your criteria different than your designates?
I don't think so.
Is that?
Yes, that was my question. Is your criteria different than whomever you designate?
So what criteria are we using? Right now, we're saying, we'll advertise anything if it's from a nonprofit or a charitable organization. If that's what we want, we can go ahead with it.
Let me turn to Krista, what is the practice, maybe, what we do?
Usually a nonprofit or charitable organization is not, if there's swear words or something, then that's not going to make the cut. If it's a profitable organization, they're going to be rejected. I don't know what else to say.
We haven't really had any problems with that area in terms of what goes on the board, because I think everybody's reasonable about what they want to advertise. What has been the problem is the fact that we use maybe a business, and therefore the business then is being advertised. So the purpose for which this policy was coming forward is to have an address, so that there is that neutrality instead of complaints about advertising businesses.
And I do know that the one issue is that you give an address, and in our town, people don't know addresses. And I know we mentioned this last meeting, but I know that, does anybody know the address of the IGA? Because that's probably the most common one, where there's something happening at IGA or at Home Hardware. I have no idea what that address is, but I know how to get there and find it. It means something to me.
500157.
Okay. I think you're in the minority that actually know addresses.
She's looking at the map.
Oh, okay.
Table. She didn't know it.
All right, so what they're saying, Councillor Danak, is at this point, unless it comes up as a problem, we're not going to look for problems. Okay, so we'll see how it flies. So, I think, could you read the motion back, please?
Moved by Councilor Dinaca that council approve policy number 47, bracket B, 2014 electronic sign board.
All in favor? Opposed? And I have no idea why, you didn't
Well,
tell us
no,
why.
well, I mentioned that I think that they should name the company.
Oh, okay.
I see.
That's why, I
Instead of
just
the
think that
address.
the address doesn't mean anything, so you put an address up there for me, I won't know where to go. So I don't support it.
Good way for people to learn.
Yeah.
All right. The next item of business is the microphone tender. And, anybody would like to make a motion on this one?
Well, to get the ball rolling, council award the microphone tender to Digital Edge in the amount of $27,745.48 to be taken from the 2014 operational budget.
Counselor Ent.
I keep going back to our finances, and if we take out the two, as you showed us, we're down to this, but we keep voting to spend more. Or I didn't wanna spend any, but spend more.
Counselor Panassi.
My question was, I see administration recommended I guess the best value was the $27,000 one. And I'm just wondering why it would be the best value in your opinion, cause I tried to look some of these up on the web and I couldn't find anything that would lead me that one was better than the other, and in fact, I couldn't find much on them at all to know what these were gonna look like, what they were, what was gonna be the best for us.
Mr. Tomato?
Have you ever speak to that? Or we've gone through this very well.
Well, what's the one that's being recommended is, the make is Brayer, what is it again, Brayer wood?
Bigger dynamic.
Something, Brayer Dynamics, I can't remember, yeah. When I did my search on the web, I, got the top 10 makes of these sort of, pieces of equipment. And the ones that came up was, Brayer Dynamics and, Sennheiser. They're the sort of the top ones. The mid-range ones, were TOA and the other ones that are listed here. I haven't seen them. I don't know. I mean, TOA might fit the bill. Brayer is like when I bought my stereo system back in the 70s, I bought Marantz because it was supposed to be really good, and I could have bought Radio Shack. My Marantz is still around. I still have it. It was a good investment decision. It cost more money. Brayer Dynamics is supposed to be one of the better models. So I look at it that way. I don't regret having spent money on quality. We're trying to buy something for council. It's gonna be in council meetings. The last thing I wanna hear from you folks is, oh boy, yeah, you saved $10,000, but the stuff broke on us. It doesn't work the way you wanted it to work. If Brayer Dynamics doesn't work the way you want it to work, I would be happy to send it back. Because when you're paying $10,000 more, you expect to get something that works. TOA doesn't work, well, might have to say, well, save $10,000, so we gotta put up with stuff that maybe doesn't work exactly the way we want, or maybe plastic on it broke. It's like, do you buy IBM or do you buy, Hewlett Packard?
Yeah.
So that's really what you're faced with.
I know we have one person that's got some expertise in the gallery. I don't know if he knows of any of these or if we can ask for an opinion on these two, but that would be, cause I don't know them, it might be good to have an opinion.
Let's wait a bit on that. Yes, Mr. Tomato?
So I think what you need is the reasoning process because we got a request for proposal. So we're focused on analyzing the proposal and figuring out how we make our choices. So if you look at the TOA, there are about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the TOAs. The minimum cost is provided by Evolution. So we said Evolution will be the company to go with if you want to go to the low end. Okay, companies like Listen and Sennheiser were priced out. Okay, so now we are left with Bear Dynamics, and the one with the more reasonable price by just a few $100 is Digital Bear Dynamics. So we are dividing the market into two parts: the low cost end, and you can make that decision, or you want to go on the high end. Now, one of the biggest differences between the Evolution and the Digital Bear Dynamic is the transport case. You have the units on the table. When you remove them, you can put them directly into the transport case. With Evolution, you have to take the batteries out and then charge the batteries. So you have a storage case as well as something mobile enough to dump in the corner there, and you charge the units. And that tended to meet exactly what we wanted in terms of our request for proposal. It's a decision based on whether I want to buy VW or I want to buy BMW. It's all a question of what you want to do.
Not yet, Councillor Hunter. Councillor Long?
I spoke with Chris from 360, and in his research, he was saying he couldn't really find anything suitable for under 30,000. He looked extremely hard just to see, and he said after a certain point he just gave up because he thought it was too pricey and that he wasn't going to come into the ballpark at all. So it's got to be really tough. But if we want to be able to provide that service to the public, and a lot of us talked about that right from the get-go, we have to make sure that we're going to be able to get something that grandma and grandpa can hear well enough. Because right now, currently, if they're looking on it on their iPad, which I've had the opportunity to speak to some, they can barely hear it. So they have to turn it really up loud and then turn their hearing aid up loud to watch it. So if we had better speakers and microphones rather, I think that that would help alleviate the problems. Depends on how much we want to spend it.
Councillor Danaka?
When I brought this RFP forward, it was brought up by Mrs. Torrens at one of the council meetings that, in favor of getting the speaker, getting the council mic. I believe it was part of our strategic goals to better communicate was to get the council chambers mic'd. We've been around this and around this. If we don't decide this now and it gets defeated, then it's done. Let's move on. But just remember, for people who are going to be saying, "Please speak up. Please speak up. I can't hear you. I can't hear you." It's something that we need to get done and get it going.
Councillor Hunter?
I was just curious, because I believe our RFP stated it had to be the one charging and transport case, and when the spreadsheet was made up, it says the specs were met on 3 of them, so we shouldn't really be talking about Evolution. It was put forward as a lower end option, but the only ones that do qualify are the only ones we should be looking at. And the least cost of the 3 is a digital media edge.
Councillor Panasic?
The other thing that I like about the digital edge is it comes with 2 speakers, and the Evolution one is only 1, and I think Mike's is only half the issue. The other half is you gotta have good speakers out there so that people can hear it. So I'm thinking that although this room isn't that large, 2 speakers would be better than 1.
Mono?
Yeah.
Any other comments? Right, my only comment is at the last meeting, we had a business person here who gave us a copy of a RFP that the previous, when we went out for tender. He brought it in, he had a, camera and mics, so video and microphones for $17,000, and it was mid-grade. And this was $17,000 for video and microphones. This is $27,000, and all it is microphones. And my other comment is, why are we going with wireless mics? What is the problem with cord? Because I think that is what's pricing us out of into the $27,000 is these wireless mics. Has nobody, did you talk about cord?
I've researched the cord ones. They're very, very expensive. They're double the price. You have to remove all kinds of things, change the structure of the room. One council tried it, and it was double the price of the wireless.
All right. So, any other comments, questions? Do you still want to ask the person in the gallery who has some technical expertise?
I would see what
Is
you
there
thought.
any objection from any of the councillors? State your question then.
Have you heard of any of these brands, and is there a big difference between them? Because I don't
Are you
know.
talking to me, Brian?
I am, yes.
Sennheiser is one of the better ones.
Absolutely, I recognize that name.
Okay, you can look it up on the internet there,
Yes.
and they have nice little units. The problem with it is you're gonna have to have one receiver for every microphone. So you're gonna have 8 little units over there picking up every little microphone. Okay, it doesn't go into one.
Yeah, I'm more, have you heard of TOA or
Never
this-
heard of TOA.
and Buyer Dynamic?
Yeah, in the older days, they've come along. But again, the wireless, my personal opinion, I don't know why you don't put a false little floor right there. That'll cover everything up and make it nice and neat. Because wireless is twice as much. I don't know where you're getting twice as much for wired. Because everywhere I look, cables are cheaper. There's less interference. And you can put a wireless receiver on that boom mic, just plug it into the XL, and it is now wireless. So there are adapters. But Sennheiser, you'll have to pick up your microphone as well as your receiver and then your transmitters. So these microphones, they don't actually come with a Sennheiser, right? You get the little clip on here.
Yeah, they're not in the running anyways, Sennheiser,
Yeah, but-
so that's.
But the idea, eh? Like, I don't know why you would go wireless, I honestly don't. Because with a half moon circle, you don't have to do the whole floor, the stage, which would be ideal. But you can just do the inside here, and then you can cover everything up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have another semi-expert who's worked with electronics.
Actually, the Evolution doesn't appear to be using, wireless microphones. It just looks like they're feeding into a transmitter, and then there's a receiver where the speakers are. One of the things that I would think about for wireless is the battery life. If they're not charged, even if they are charged, they usually use 9-volt batteries, and you might get 3 hours or 4 hours use out of them. I think you'll find that the batteries will be dying pretty fast on the wireless. Axe, I see you put in a quote on this. That's Axe Music in Edmonton, and they have put in the video and speaker systems in all the courthouses in Alberta, and they're using TOA. That's, you can just go over and listen to them right here, and we use TOA at Smitty's, and there's nothing wrong with the equipment at all. For the amount of the difference in price, you could buy backup pieces for those, for the $27,000 if you're concerned about them failing on you. But I would ask both of these people, exactly for a diagram of how this is going to be laid out. I would go to, I agree with Ross. I would go with the corded microphones. I have never seen a wireless microphone that was cheaper than corded.
Okay. Any other questions? All right then. So, again, I'm looking at this quote for $17,000 for video and microphones. And I'm wondering, did you ever contact this person?
Madam Mayor, I think we are prejudicing this process by introducing an article or a request for proposal which is not part of the request for proposal that we got. This information was brought to us here in council. We went through a process and we made this, we itemized them, we brought it to council. I think it's just fair to let the process play itself out rather than trying to argue out the request for proposal that was brought outside the process, if I may.
I'm just looking at the price, and I'm thinking that this is out of my league. Councillor Hampton?
If anybody's wondering why I keep looking up, I was just at the ATCO Center in Edmonton yesterday, and the microphone systems there all hang from the ceiling. They're not around the base in the front, they're not nowhere else. It's actually right about here, because you're talking forward anyway, it's gonna pitch and it's gonna catch it. And it's just a nice white little cable, white little round ball, picks up and everything clearly. We do a lot of video conferencing, saves time and money, right? So, not that I was in Edmonton, but that one had to be face to face. So it's just, I can't imagine how we can do this here, except hang around the other side with a little stick to give it an angle in, and then hang down. Wired, I'm glad you did ask the gallery, because I wasn't thinking battery life. That will become an issue. We have one time 5.5 hours, had a meeting, so that may or may not become an issue. I have no idea. I'm willing to sit on this and review further.
All right, any other comments? Mr. Tamako?
Fortunately, we've used the Bear Dynamics in the city of Edmonton for police commission meetings. We start at 2 o'clock sometimes, and we end at 9 o'clock. These are very extensive, lasting units. One of the things that we did was we invited a couple of people around Christmas time to bring their units here. Maybe what council should do is that between evolution and digital, invite them here so you can look at a unit and make some decisions for yourself. We see for example, Crystal and myself, we were here, we saw the way the unit was set up. I think by seeing things and asking the questions, it may help you to make that decision. The difficulty you're running into is that every time people are complaining about this and we keep tossing it back to the back burner, and it's not going to go away. So let's stipulate the process that will help you to make that decision. If it means inviting these 2 companies to come in at the time that you can come and see how it's displayed, maybe that might help you move forward, because it's not going to go away.
Councillor Hampton?
One last little comment. Another thing that came from the gallery was that our courthouse uses one of these systems. Well, it cost me nothing to go visit tomorrow during their, when they're open, and actually just take a peek and talk to them that are using it and get first-hand experience.
Consent administration also. Councillor Panasa?
Did they show you these items, Kelly? Like, have you seen both of them?
Oh yeah, I've seen the Bear Dynamic.
Yeah.
They brought 2 types of goosenecks, the short one and the long one. And once it's done, there's a transport case, and you just put that in. The charging time is about, I think, 10 hours, if I get it right. And they came here, right into the room, and then they set up for us, or demonstrated where the speakers would be at the back. Yeah, so we've seen it.
And what about the TOA one?
TOA, I haven't seen it, but the decision is based on the fact that it's the lowest cost among the 5 to go with Evolution. So if they're all using the same brand, TOA, then it just makes sense to go with the one that has the least cost.
Yeah, and that's my problem, is I have a tough time knowing whether TOA is of lower quality than the Buyer Dynamic. I understand the cost is different, so I'm making an assumption, but that's not necessarily true, so.
Okay, I think we beat this one to death. Can you read the motion back, please?
Moved by Councilor Panasic that council award the microphone tender to Digital Edge at the amount of $27,745.48 to be taken from the 2014 operational budget.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion is defeated. Councilor Panasic?
I'd like to make another motion that we, ask administration to see if we can get these companies to come in and show us these products so we can make a decision.
Evolution and Digital Edge.
Yeah, Evolution and, Digital Edge Media.
Any others? Just the two?
Well, those are the two, it's either TOA or this buyer one, so yes, and those are the ones in our budget, so I would say yes.
Evolution and what was the other one?
Digital Media. Or Digital Edge Media, Digital Edge Media.
All right. Comment on that, Councilor Panasic?
Mr. Tonko, so they've been here already?
Yes.
They know the room and things like that?
Yes.
So you can have an idea?
Yes.
As a side note for discussion, I'm wondering if they'd be interested in giving a wired microphone, system quote also, to see if it would be, what price would come in at. Just those two, while they're here.
Did you want to add that to the motion?
Sure, doesn't hurt. Good options.
That's all.
Can you read the
Well,
motion back?
Both companies.
Yeah, just those two.
Please read the motion back now.
Moved by Councilor Panasic that council direct administration to invite the Digital Edge and Evolution representative to a regular meeting of council to speak on behalf of their wireless microphones for council chambers proposal and ask for a wired microphone proposal.
Mr. Tamako?
I think the word regular meeting of council will make it very difficult because we may not be able to be at a regular meeting of council.
Yeah, so if we scratch regular meeting and give us the option of regular or perhaps a earlier meeting of council or a special meeting if we need to come in for it. So just scratch regular.
All in favor? It's carried. Do you want to take a break? Okay, we'll have a break for